Hello and welcome back to my Dandelion Diaries. We're going to be covering another ink exploration today, and this was the highest voted on my last poll, so we're going to be doing lavender / lilac colored inks. I picked 24 inks out of my collection, so this is going to be a longer video. I will have timestamps in the description, of course, so let's just go ahead and talk about supplies and then jump into the inks. So supplies, I'm in my Wonderland 222 A5 notebook here. This has machine number 9 Tomoegawa Toei River paper. I'm going to be using a Sailor Hocoro dip nib with the Fude nib on it, dip pen with the Fude nib on it. I have a pipette, my MU stamp block that I always use, and then I have my t-shirt over here and some jars of water. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the very first ink. This is actually one of my favorite, more lavender colored inks, and it's by Kobe. It's number 56, and it's called Rokko Shichidanka. It's super hard to say. This is the spelling of it if anybody is curious. And this is honestly one of my favorite more lavender-like colors because it does have a nice, soft, blurply look to it. It looks true to like a lavender colored flower to me, and the consistency of Kobe inks is just undeniably wonderful. I really love this one, and I do have another Kobe ink I'm going to be doing today as well that you probably already can guess, but this one just has a special place in my heart because I love the color payoff and the way this one writes, and it's just so gorgeous. And with that, let's go ahead and do the other Kobe ink, and that is number 57. And this one is, I believe it's Himeajisai. It's Hydrangea is the rough translation. And I kind of like to consider this the more lilac version, or I guess favorite lilac from Kobe. It has a lot more pink elements to it, but with the shading in this ink, it drives a bit more of purple through. In writing, a lot of times you get this more soft kind of red-violet, light red-violet kind of color versus more of the Rokko Shichidanka, which has like the more blue-purple, so blue-violet versus red-violet here. Both of these inks are absolutely phenomenal, and I am still on the hunt for a bottle of the Hydrangea, but it eludes me every time I go to look. Next up, I have an ink from Van Diemen's. This is part of their Encore series, and this one is the Pas de Deux. It is non-shimmery, so I'm hoping that it's going to look similar to one of these inks. This does have a lot of shading with it as well, similar to multiple inks that we're going to be talking about today. And the shading that this one has is a bit more of like a blue haloing pink purple shade kind of bits. Similar, honestly, to the Hydrangea from Kobe, but it's not quite as saturated looking. It has a bit more of a pastel look to it in writing, at least. It does flow very well. I adore a lot of Van Diemen inks, and there's going to be a lot in this video. But comparison-wise, I just feel like this needs to be included as another option. If you can't find Hydrangea, you might be able to find the Pas de Deux. And also similar to the Pas de Deux is another ink from Van Diemen's, and this is actually one of my inks that I have for April in my pens. This is the Naturalis Dualis line, and it is Last Light, and it's another shader dual tone kind of ink. And this one starts off looking a bit more gray toned, at least compared to the ones we've done so far. And then as it dries, it has this gorgeous kind of pink, purple, and gray, honestly, shift to it, and it does show the shading in the writing if you're using a wet enough pen. A lot of my experience lately has been if an ink is shading in a swatch, the only way I'm going to get it to shade in writing is if I'm using a very juicy or very wet flowing pen, or just a really, really broad nib, like a calligraphy nib or a stub nib, or even just a really juicy broad that's going to lay down a lot of ink. But Last Light is gorgeous. I love this color. I'm still obsessed with this entire line of inks, the Naturalis Dualis ones, so really any color from this line is just phenomenal. Next, let's do a shimmery ink. This one is from Diamine. This is, I believe, from the green Inkvent. I don't remember which year that was, but this is Memory Lane. It is just a shimmer ink, and it has this kind of icy shimmer in it, but the base color is much more lavender-esque, and I think it gives a nice kind of subtle shimmering appearance. I feel like Diamine does this color very well, and every year in the Inkvent they seem to come out with another variation of a lavender or lilac kind of color, and I did try to pick all of the ones that I had left, at least in my collection, for this purpose. But Memory Lane has a subtle kind of soft purpleness to it, almost like a gray purple in some papers, and with the silver shimmer it does add to that gray element. However, I do consider this a more like soft lavender color, just like lavender in the dusk. Like it's giving memories like from the past. I think I included this ink in one of my nostalgia ink explorations or ink videos. It's just a really great ink. It has wonderful flow and the shimmer behaves phenomenal with this one as well. It's just a lovely, nice lavendery color. Next is another one of the Diamine Inkvent inks. So this is what a full bottle of the inks look like after they come out. This one is from the purple Inkvent and it is the Jacaranda color. And this is by far my favorite of the Diamine Inkvent purples. It's the only one that I've actually bought a full bottle of. And I think I love it so much because it's so similar to that Kobe 56 up at the top. But the color of this is a little bit lighter, a little bit softer, and it just has a bit more of a drastic shade from like light to dark in the writing. It is also a drier ink, so it doesn't have that going for it, but it's just such a lovely color. And now that I have a bit of Mexican heritage in my life, the Jacaranda flowers just mean a little bit more to me, and I think it's so cool that I got to learn about it through the Inkvent before I got to experience them in person. And I think that's just, I don't know, really special in an odd kind of way. Next is another one of the Diamine Inkvent purples, and this one is called Lullaby. I do think this one is a bit more of like a lilac-y color, but I wanted to include it because it is one of those inks, you know, that is in the Diamine Inkvents every year. I can confess with this ink, it is not my favorite. It's a little too light for my taste, and it's also pretty dry, but the color does deserve to be in this exploration because it is a nice lilac-y kind of color. It has that soft pink purple look to it. It does give Lullaby vibes. It's just a really soft pastel-y kind of ink. I think if I were to mix maybe a couple drops of the Jacaranda in this, or even maybe a couple drops of the Kobe 57, it might liven it up a bit for me, but by itself, it's not my favorite, but it is a nice kind of soft, more lilac-y kind of color. And then from the most recent Inkvent, the teal one, we have Gala or Gala, which is their, again, version of a lilac purpley lavender kind of color. And I do enjoy this color a bit as well. I think because it reminds me so much of like the Kobe 57 or the Pas de Dieu by Van Diemen's. It just also has a bit of a drier consistency and isn't quite as interesting as those two inks. This one does have some lovely shading from like light to dark as again, like, you know, Lullaby does and the Jacaranda does. And the color of this one I think is a brighter version of Lullaby with a slightly more blue tone, just very slightly. I think Diamine again does these colors very well, and every year I looked forward to see what they can come up with that's not been done before. And I think the last 4 inks I've done gives an example of every single one of these is slightly different, and I think that's wonderful. So good job, Diamine. Keep them coming. Another ink from Diamine that is part of their Shimmertastic line is called Lilac Satin. It is a silver shimmer base with a more lilac-y purple kind of color. I think I said that backwards. It's a silver shimmer with a lilac color base. It's lovely, but it has an interesting color palette. Y'all will see. And I think what I find interesting about this one is that it starts off as a very darker, like a dark purpley looking color, and then as it dries it lightens on the page. With the silver shimmer on this, it does make it much lighter than I think the base ink actually could be, but it's such a lovely consistency. Pretty much any of the Shimmertastic line just behaves beautifully. So if you're interested in getting started in shimmer inks, if you have not already, I would highly recommend getting samples or trying out a color from the Shimmertastic line from Diamine. They're really great prices, and just all of them are so good. I don't think I found a single Shimmertastic color that I have not loved. So Diamine just really does rock this kind of pattern with shimmer inks. Their Shimmertastic line is just really wonderful. Next, I have another Van Diemen's ink. This is part of their Night series. This one is called Twilight Mist. This is the reformulation, so I don't know what's all that much different about it, but it does have a purple, kind of blue purple pink shimmer in it, and the base color is more of a lavendery kind of blue purple kind of color. It's just really beautiful. And the base color of this, like I said, is that kind of more lavender blue purple color, but it's very soft. I think in the reformulation it doesn't have as strong of a blue element as the original, but it still looks really pretty with the shimmer color. I am honestly a sucker for colored shimmers. I love ones that have anything but gold or silver because I feel like we see those so often. So when I get an ink that has like a pink shimmer or a purple shimmer or even a blue or a red shimmer now, like it's so exciting because it's something very different, and I feel like I could make more ink combinations if I ever wanted to mix anything into the ink. There's just so many possibilities. And lastly, for Van Diemen's, this is the last one I'm including from them. This one is called Ragdoll Kiss. It's part of their Feline series. And the base color of this is similar to that of the Twilight Mist, where it's a bit more lavender. It looks like there's a lot of pink at the bottom here, but that's just the dye kind of sitting. The shimmer in this one is more of a silver color. So while Twilight Mist has more of that purple shimmer, Ragdoll Kiss has more of a silver shimmer. I'm hoping on camera you'll be able to tell the difference between Ragdoll Kiss and Twilight Mist. They are very close together, and I probably don't need bottles of both, but I just really love this color, as you can tell, since I have so many different colors from this family, but it's just wonderful. This one has a great consistency too. I feel like Van Diemen's does a really great job with their consistency in inks, at least the shimmer ones. I don't know if I have a shimmer ink from them that feels hard to write with. I usually do pretty well unless the shimmer has a more chunky consistency, which there are a few from them that do have that. But Ragdoll Kiss has the silver, very finely milled shimmer and is slightly lighter than Twilight Mist and has a slightly more pink element to it. But together, side by side, they're going to look very close together. So take your pick if you want a cat themed ink or a night themed ink. I guess you could have one or the other. Next, I have a Ferris Press ink, and this one is fairly old, so I don't even know if you can get it anymore. It is Little Robinia. It's one of my original lavenders that I fell in love with. I don't reach for this ink very much anymore just because it developed to be too light for me, but I do like using this as like washes and background with just a paintbrush, or just adding little subtle hints of like purple and blue kind of elements. And the one thing that really sold me on this ink was the shading properties it does have. It starts off pretty light and dries pretty light, but it has this gorgeous blue halo with a lavender, like super light lavender pastel base. It's just really, really pretty. I think this ink is best suited for me personally with painting now, but I'm sure there are others out there that absolutely love it for writing, just because it does have those gorgeous kind of shading, haloing elements. So maybe if you had a really juicy writer like I mentioned with like the pas de deux or the less light, you might get more of those elements to pull through and make it a bit darker. I just have not found a pen that really does that for me for this ink yet. Next up, I have a Kitty Inkpot ink, which is a brand I discovered last year. They are, I think, manufactured in China. This one is from So and So, which is definitely the main place I would be able to find a lot of these more Chinese inks, besides AliExpress. But this one is called No Pendant Braiding. And something Kitty Inkpot is pretty known for now is their shading inks, and this ink is no exception. It does pull a bit more on the brown pink side originally, and then as it dries, it has a lot more of those purple elements kind of pull through. So this one could be a mix of both lilac and lavender depending on the user, and it is honestly dark enough that I think you could get away with this one being a more legible kind of lavender or lilac colored ink. The shading in this one really just sells it for me. It's super fun, and just, yeah, it behaves really well, and I enjoy the Kitty Inkpot inks now. They're quite fun to play around with. Next, I have another shimmering ink, and this one is from Dominant Industry, and it's called Sunset. It's one of their more famous colors. The shimmer in this one, I believe, is like a goldish silver color. There's another ink that goes along with this one called Evening, and it has a different color shimmer, so they're like a duo, I think. But this one is just a really beautiful shader and just looks lovely. I do find this ink to be a bit on the drier side, all things considered. It does okay, but it's just not my favorite in terms of consistency, but the color is phenomenal. Again, it's like that kind of super shader where it goes from pink to purple, little bits of blue. I think the best comparison I have to this one, once it's dry, is probably going to be Van Diemen's Pas de Deux, but that one does not have shimmer in it. So it's hit or miss. It's also slightly different in color. It's a little bit more pink on the Pas de Deux side and a little bit more purple on the Sunset side. So it's not exactly the same, but they might be better dupes. It might be a better dupe. I don't know. Pas de Deux has a better consistency to me than Sunset does, but just doesn't have the shimmer. Next up, I have an ink from Vinta. This is another one of their more well-known colors, and it's the Maskara color. I don't remember exactly which year this one was from, but it's another one of those super shader purpley kind of colors. I do consider this one to be another one of those inks that's a bit too light for me to see. Kind of like the little Robinia, it has a very similar consistency to that one where it's light and then it dries light with a little bit more shading. I do like the viscosity or like the wetness of the Vinta ink a bit more than that of the Ferris wheel press, but both of these inks are on the drier side for me as well. Mascara is beautiful though. It's purple and blue and very ethereal looking. It's giving, you know, mermaid in the sky or something, I don't know, but it's just a lovely color and has wonderful shading. It's just a bit too light for me personally. Next, we have another one of my absolute favorite lavender lilac inks. This is Jane Eyre from Wearingeul. I've used probably 3/4 of this bottle at this point. It is just so gorgeous. I love the shading it has. I love Jane Eyre, the story. I think that's really just my attachment to it, is the story. This is one of my favorite books of all time. And yeah, I really adore this ink. This ink definitely falls more towards the lilac side. I think it has a lot more of that red pink or red violet element to it, but the shading goes really, really dark purple in very heavily pooled areas. So if you have a very, very, very wet pen, and I mean a very wet pen, you're gonna get a lot of those darker elements kind of pull through. Otherwise, you're gonna stick around the kind of medium to light, lilac-y kind of color that this gives off. It is a drier ink, but I actually like this one for some reason. I don't know. It's, again, I think it's just that it's Jane Eyre and I'm obsessed or something, but it's a gorgeous color. I know Wearingeul has a lot of other really great lavender colors. I just don't have them, or I could not find them in my stash. So if you have a great Wearingeul lavender color that you love, please leave in the comments, or any lavender or lilac color that I don't put in this video. Please leave them down there so everybody can find out, you know, something else if they didn't like something in this video. Next, I'm going to do a series of Sailor inks. So we have the Sailor Shikiori's Fuji Sugata. And this one is a lovely shader with, again, those pink to purple elements. I don't know. I like this one, but I like the Manyo Fuji better, which I'm also going to be swatching. I think the color of this is very bright, very legible. And if you're wanting a lavender lilac kind of color that actually stays lavender lilac in writing, I would highly recommend this one. It behaves beautifully. It flows very well. It just has a great consistency. I just prefer other Sailor inks in this color family to this one, but it's a gorgeous color and really just no complaints. A wonderful shader as well. And like I mentioned, this is Sailor Manyo's Fuji, which is my preferred to the Fuji Sugata, even though they're very different in color. So Fuji has a bit more of a gray element to it, and when it dries down, the shading is a bit more drastic, and I think that's why I enjoy it a bit more over the Fuji Sugata. But the Fuji has that kind of blue to pink to purple to gray kind of range, very similar to that actually of Van Diemen's Last Light, now that I have them on the pages together. So if you wanted a more inexpensive version of Fuji, definitely check out Last Light. Yeah, Fuji's just great. I love the consistency. Again, Sailor does a wonderful job with all of their inks, just like Van Diemen's does. I feel like they're one of those brands out there that no matter what ink you get from them, you're going to have a good time. So just a wonderful color and a wonderful brand altogether. And then the last Sailor ink I wanted to include is part of their ink studio line. This is number 150. I heard a rumor that the ink studio line was going away, so if that's true, can we get some confirmation in the comments? Because that would be very sad, because there's a lot of really beautiful inks from the studio line. And I think color-wise, this one is most similar to the Shikiori's Fuji Sugata, and that it's a bit more of that brighter purpley pink kind of color. However, 150 does not have the level of shading that the Shikiori one does. I think in writing, another one of the great comparisons on the page already is probably the Diamine Gala, which is recent. So again, if you're wanting a more inexpensive version to a Sailor ink, maybe check that one out, even though consistency wise they're very different, and you know, ultimately shading wise they are also a bit different. Next, I have an ink from a pen friend, and this one is by a brand called Majohn, which again I think is a Chinese brand, but I do think you can get this one off of Amazon. This one is called Clear Dream. And the consistency of this ink is phenomenal. It's very wet feeling in writing, but the color payoff is a little bit more unsaturated. So you're getting that more pastel vibe with a very nice flowing ink, which is wonderful. We love when that happens. The color of this one is a bit more on the lavender side or the blue violet side. It does have some wonderful shading to it as well. It's a bit darker, so maybe a bit more legible than some of the other blue purple inks we have going on here, the lavender inks. It's just a really great consistency, and I was very glad to be introduced to this brand of ink. I think it's wonderful. Next up, we have an ink from Ostrich Inks. This one is called Light Mauve. And this one is a pretty new ink to me, so I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to include it, but I figured I'd give it a shot. It does have a nice kind of light mauve color, or a light purpley pink kind of color, and it is very light in nature. I haven't written with this one yet, so I can't say how it behaves in a pen, but just based on like swatching experience and like writing with my same utensils all the time, it does have a pretty average flow. It doesn't seem to be overly wet or overly dry, but every pen can make a difference with that. The color is pretty flat. There's not a lot of variation from like shading, but it does have a nice color. I think this would be best used for painting for me. If I were to do like a portrait or something with like lips or blush, I feel like this would really do well with skin tones. I don't know how well it fits with my lilac and lavenders now that it's down, but we'll see, I guess, once everything fully dries. Next, I have an ink from Push Pull. I'm not sure where you can get this brand of inks. This was a sample from a pen friend. This is called Purple People Eater. I haven't played around with this ink too much either. It's a bit newer to my collection. I just think the color of it's really interesting, and I love the name. I don't know, there's something about like Purple People Eater that's fun to say. It does fit more on that lilac side, so it's kind of like the Kobe 57, a bit more of that pink, red, violet. It doesn't have shading that I remember. It's a pretty flat color again, but I could be wrong. My memory may not serve me so well on this one because it's pretty new. I do like the color. I like the consistency of it too. I feel like it's got a nice wetness to it, but it's just not something I reached for yet. So we'll have to line this up for a future inking in the future. For our second to last ink, I have an ink from Troublemaker, and this one's another one of their more famous shaders, and this one is called Fox Glove. And this is another one of those inks that, you know, looks beautiful in swatches and in calligraphy, but when writing, I just have the hardest time with these inks. I think there's something about the formulation of the Troublemaker inks that specifically have the dual chrome or like chroma shading aspect. They just behave really terribly in pens for me. I do love the color of this, but I'm very happy to have found several other options that kind of fit this kind of vibe for me. But the color is really just really pretty. So if you wanted a fun painting ink, I think this would be really good. But I think personally, I have other brands of ink that show this color really well that I prefer more than the Troublemaker one. No shame against them. It's just not my preference. Fox Glove is gorgeous. It's a pinky purple with some blue shading, and just, yeah, it's really pretty. And the last ink I'm going to be doing is from Collection Traced, and the color of this one is called Light Wisteria. And Collection Traced is another one of those brands that is China-based or is a Chinese brand, so like the Kitty Ink Pot or the Ostrich inks. So I think you're best off finding them at So&So or AliExpress if you're wanting to get them in the States. But Light Wisteria is a gorgeous color. It has that super shading element to it with the pink, purple, blue situation again. I really wanted to include it to see if there was something on the page that was similar enough, if this ink is hard to find. I think the consistency of this one's really nice. It's not super wet or super dry. It's pretty average, but the shading in it really is strong, and I think that's something that is absolutely wonderful about it. And with that, that is all 24 inks down on the pages. I'm going to let them finish drying and come back and do the close-ups like normal. I do want to say again, if you have a lavender or lilac colored ink that I was not able to include in the video, please drop it down in the comments. I always love seeing the other additions y'all guys put out there because there's so many inks out there. So many. So with that, I'll be back in a minute and we'll do some close-ups. Alrighty, I am back. Everything has pretty much dried. Before I zoom in, I do want to talk a bit about like comparisons straight off the gate of like what looks really similar to each other. I feel like Pas de Deux and Mascara are kind of close together. The Last Light, the Light Wisteria, and Fuji are also kind of close together, which is kind of cool. Sunset is also kind of in that same range. And I feel like Jane Eyre and Lullaby are actually kind of close together, which is so interesting because I'm not such a fan of the Lullaby ink. I do also feel like 150 and Gala are really close together, and Fox Glove and Fuji Sugata are also very close together. But enough about that. Y'all can look at comparisons for yourself. Let's go ahead and zoom in. So here we have the Kobe 56 Rokko Shichidanka, one of my all-time favorite, more lavender colors. It does have a stronger blue base, but it is pretty firmly in the lavender family to me. Then we have Kobe 57's Himeajisai, which is Hydrangea roughly translated, and I do feel like this is the more lilac version. So we have like a more lavender side, a more lilac side. That's kind of what I'm going for here. So lavender is a bit more of like that blue violet, and Lilac is a bit more of like that red violet. Then we have the two Van Dieman inks here. We have Pas de Dieu and Last Light. I feel like these were way more similar in my mind, and I'm so glad they are actually a bit different. Pas de Dieu does have a bit more of like a pastel kind of look to it. It's a bit more washed out looking, and the Last Light does have a bit more of a saturation, but both are still a light colored ink. I feel like they both kind of fit more on this lilac colored side, and Last Light has a bit more of a gray element to it. Then we had the 4 Diamine Inkvent inks, and we started off with Memory Lane, which is the only shimmer one on here, and it's that silver shimmer with a kind of more lavender base. Jacaranda, which is my favorite out of the 4, Lullaby, and Gala. I do feel like they're all pretty different from each other, which I was also very happy to see, considering Diamine does do a similar color to that every single year in the Inkvent, it seems. And then the next 4 we had down here was another Diamine ink. We have Lilac Satin. Like I mentioned, this one does start really bright and dark, and then as it dries, it settles a bit. It is still a bit more of like a darker lavender-like color. It's kind of more neutral purple to me, honestly. And then we had the Twilight Mist by Van Diemen's and Ragdoll Kiss. I do feel like these two inks are very, very similar together, especially after Twilight Mist was reformulated. The shimmer colors are really all that's a bit different, and the little bit of shading that Ragdoll Kiss has is also a bit different. And then we had Little Robinia from Ferris Press down here, which has a very light consistency. Like I mentioned, it's very hard to read for me now, and I use mainly for like painting or any kind of washes, but the color is gorgeous with that kind of light purple with the blue haloing and just a really soft presence. On the other side of the page, we started off with a kitty ink pot ink called No Pendant Braiding. It does have a bit more of a yellow-brown shading to it, which I think pulls a lot more of those pink elements away, but I do think this one is a bit more of a lilac-y color, but in writing you may get it to be a bit more of a pinkish brown. And then we had Diamond Industries Sunset, which is just gorgeous with a kind of, I don't know if it's rose gold or gold shimmer, I always forget, but the consistency of this one isn't my favorite, but the color is stunning. So I was really glad to see that like Pas de Dieu is really close to this one, and some of the other more shady purples. It just doesn't have the shimmer, so I'd have to add my own shimmer, which isn't a problem for me at least. And then we have Vinta Maskara, which has this gorgeous shading. Much like the Ferris Press's Little Robinia down here though, it does have a very light consistency in writing, and is maybe a bit more viscous than the Ferris Press. I guess that better consistency, but it's still not the best. And then we have one of my favorites, Wearingeul Jane Eyre. I love this ink. I love the shading range that it has, and I just love the color. It's a nice, more lilac-y purple, very soft, very feminine, and just, I love the story of Jane Eyre. So anyways, then we have the 4 Sailor inks, or 3 Sailor inks, excuse me. We have Fuji Sugata from the Shikiori line, Fuji from the Manyo line, and 150 from the Ink Studio line. So all of these are kind of similar. I think 150 and Fuji Sugata are closer together, obviously. Fuji has a bit stronger of a pink shade to it, and I feel it fits more like in the lilac family, versus these two fit more in like the lavender family. They're all fantastic. I do enjoy Sailor inks quite a bit. They are a bit higher in the price point for the amount of ink that you're getting, but they consistently behave well on everything, and they just have a great range of colors. Yeah, just truly wonderful. Then we have Majohn Clear Dream, which was a really fun sample that I was gifted. I love the shading in this one. It is another one of those more legible lavender colors. The shading doesn't pull through super strong in writing, but it is just a pretty color, and I want to say a pretty inexpensive ink as well. And then the last 4 we have down here, we have Ostrich Ink's Light Mauve, which after it dried, I feel like it still fits with the lilac family. It's just maybe a little bit too pink in some ways, but it's still really pretty. And then we have Push Pull Purple People Eater. I still love the name of this. And the color of this one is pretty unique. I don't think I have one that's close to this on the pages here. The Hydrangea from Kobe 57 is the closest, but that ink is a little bit more purple. So Purple People Eater is actually a little bit more on the pink, maybe stronger lilac side, which is cool. Then we have Troublemaker's Fox Glove, which the consistency is not my favorite in pens, but the color of this ink is absolutely beautiful with like the blue haloing and the pink shading and the purple, just lots of beautiful colors. And then we have Collection Traced Light Wisteria, which again was a really great dupe for like the Sailor Munyo's Fuji or Van Diemen's Last Light. So if this one's easier for you to get, you'd probably get a similar color there. And with that, that is all 24 inks that I included in the lavender and lilac color family today. This was a lot of inks to go through, and like I mentioned, I'm sure there are plenty more out there that I was not able to cover because this color family is just ginormous. Yeah, I'm going to wish you guys the best. I'm going to keep going through the poll that I recently did of like what's next, and I want to say it was weird greens. So I'll start getting all those pulled together and we'll have a video coming out about that soon. But I'm going to wish you guys the best. Be blessed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.